The storm raged on outside, but it couldn't hold a candle to the devastation in the room. The winds howled and the windows rattled, but Clara didn't hear them. She was lost in the noise of the past crashing over her, everything she had tried to bury, everything she had tried to forget.
Why are we still here?
Madeline asked, her voice shaking, almost in disbelief.
Why did we stay? After everything that's happened?
Clara's heart broke, but there was nothing she could say to undo the damage.
Because sometimes the storm inside you is harder to escape than the one outside.
And with that, the words fell heavy between them, suffocating the room in the aftermath of the storm they had all been waiting for. The wind outside was now a relentless roar, the house trembling under its force as if it might collapse at any moment. The hurricane had reached its peak, but the storm inside Madeline's house had already devastated everything it touched. There was no hiding from it now. The truth had been exposed, and the fragile fabric of their relationships was in tatters. Each word, each glance, seemed to cut deeper than the next. Clara stood at the window, staring out into the howling abyss of rain and wind, her reflection barely visible in the glass. She felt a cold, heavy weight on her chest, as though the world had collapsed in on her. Outside, the storm seemed to grow in intensity, as if it mirrored the chaos within. The waves crashing against the shore echoed in her mind, drowning out the sounds of the arguments swirling behind her.
Clara.
Ben's voice broke through the haze of her thoughts. She didn't turn to look at him, but she could feel his presence, the unspoken words hanging heavily between them.
I told you this would happen.
Ben said, his voice rough, his steps slow as he approached.
I tried to warn you. We've been running from this for so long. I didn't know how to make it stop, but here we are.
Clara could hear the regret in his voice, but also something deeper. Guilt, yes, but also a certain satisfaction, as if he was relieved that it had all come out at last. The truth was like a jagged knife, and now it had cut through everything. There was no going back. She turned to face him, her eyes red from the tears she hadn't let herself shed.
I didn't want this, Ben. I didn't want to hurt anyone. But you left me with nothing. You abandoned me, and now everything is falling apart.
Ben's jaw tightened, and he took a step closer to her.
I know. I left. I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought it was the only way to protect you, to protect us. But I was wrong. And now...
He paused, his words faltering.
Now I don't know what to do. I don't know how to fix this.
The silence that followed was deafening. They both knew it was too late for apologies. The damage had been done, and nothing could undo the betrayal they had both felt. The tension between them was palpable, like an electric current in the air, charged with unspoken anger, sorrow, and regret. Just then, Madeline stormed into the room, her face a mask of fury and disbelief. Her hands were shaking as she wiped away the tears that had begun to fall.
I don't understand.
She spat, her voice trembling with both rage and hurt.
How could you do this to me? How could you both do this to me? To us?
Tom was right behind her, his face grim, his body tense. He had been silent for most of the evening, his anger simmering under the surface, but now it seemed to boil over. He stepped forward, placing a hand on Madeline's shoulder, but she shrugged it off violently.
Madeline.
Clara began, her voice soft, almost pleading.
Please.
No, Clara!
Madeline interrupted, her voice rising.
No more please. How could you keep this from me? For 5 years?
She was shaking now, her chest heaving with every breath.
I trusted you, both of you. And this is how you repay that trust?
Ben stepped back, clearly overwhelmed. He had always been good at hiding his emotions, burying them under layers of deflection and distance, but now, as Madeline's words hit him like a slap, he couldn't pretend anymore.
I'm sorry.
He muttered, his voice barely audible.
I never wanted to hurt you, Madeline. I never wanted this to happen.
But Madeline wasn't listening anymore. She spun around to face Tom, her eyes wild with pain.
And you, Tom. You knew. You knew all along.
Tom froze, his expression faltering for just a second before he regained his composure. His voice was low, but there was a firmness to it now.
I didn't know the details, Madeline. I never asked. I never.
That's right.
Madeline snapped, her voice cold with betrayal.
You never asked. You didn't care enough to ask.
The words stung more than anything else, cutting into the fragile connection Tom had with Madeline. He had tried to protect her, tried to keep the peace, but now he could see that the cracks had grown too deep. The damage was irreparable. Madeline turned back to Clara, her eyes blazing with unspeakable hurt.
How long were you planning on keeping this from me, Clara? How long were you going to let me live in this lie?
Clara felt the weight of Madeline's gaze pierce her, and for the first time in years, she allowed herself to feel the full force of the shame and guilt that had been festering inside her.
I didn't want to lie to you. I didn't want to hurt you. But it's too late now. You know everything. And I'm sorry.
Madeline's expression softened for a fleeting moment, a flicker of pain passing through her eyes before it was replaced with cold indifference.
Sorry doesn't fix this. Nothing will fix this.
Her voice dropped to a whisper, full of heartbreak.
Nothing can ever make this right.
The room fell into an aching silence, the weight of the past pressing down on them all. Outside, the storm raged louder, the wind howling as though it were responding to the turmoil inside. In the corner of the room, Sarah, who had been silent up until now, stepped forward, her face pale but resolute.
We can't keep doing this,
she said quietly.
We can't keep fighting each other. This storm, it isn't just outside. It's in here too.
She gestured around the room, encompassing all the anger, pain, and confusion.
If we don't start talking, really talking, then we're all going to drown. And when the storm passes, we'll still be stuck here with nothing left.
There was a long pause as everyone absorbed Sarah's words. The weight of her simple but profound statement hung in the air. She was right. They were all trapped, physically in this house, emotionally in this cycle of blame and regret. If they didn't find a way to break free, to forgive, or at least try to understand, then they might as well have been lost to the storm. But as Clara looked at each of the faces in the room, Ben, Madeline, Tom, Sarah, she realized that she wasn't ready to make peace yet. Not now, not with the storm still tearing through their lives. The damage was too great, the wounds too raw.
I don't know how to fix this,
Clara said, her voice barely above a whisper, her gaze flicking from Madeline to Ben.
I don't know if we can.
Ben stepped toward her, his voice low but insistent.
We have to try, Clara. We have to. For the sake of what's left, if nothing else.
Madeline shook her head slowly, tears welling in her eyes.
What's left, Ben? What's left when everything you've built turns to ash?
Before anyone could respond, the storm outside reached its peak. The wind shrieked as it tore through the trees, and a deafening crack sounded overhead. The lights in the house flickered once more, and then, without warning, the power cut out completely. Darkness descended on them. For a moment, there was only the sound of the storm, the unrelenting howl of nature reclaiming its dominion. It was a perfect metaphor for the chaos within the house. Clara stood in the darkness, her heart heavy, her mind racing. The storm outside was still there, furious and unstoppable. And so was the storm inside. The hurricane had finally passed. The wind, once furious and unrelenting, now only whispered through the trees, the rain long ceased. The house, which had felt like a prison for the last several hours, stood eerily still in the silence that followed the storm. The air was thick with a smell of salt water and wet earth, the world outside a battered landscape of debris and fallen branches. But inside, the silence was deafening in a different way. The storm outside had torn through the coastal town, but it was the storm within the house that had shattered everything. The power was still out, and the faint light from a single candle flickered on the table in the center of the room, casting long shadows. The atmosphere felt suffocating, the heavy tension that hung between the group unspoken but undeniable. Clara was the first to break the silence, her voice fragile as she looked around the room.
Is everyone okay?
Her eyes met each face in turn, but no one responded immediately. It was as if everyone was afraid to break the fragile stillness with words, as if nothing could be said that would undo what had already been broken. Madeline was the one to stand first. She crossed the room in deliberate slow steps, her face drawn tight with exhaustion and anger.
Okay.
She repeated bitterly, the word falling from her lips like an accusation. She stopped just short of Clara, glaring down at her.
Is that what you want to hear from me? That I'm okay after everything? After you.
She stopped herself, her voice faltering as the weight of it all seemed to crush her for a moment. Clara opened her mouth to respond, but no words came. She could feel the weight of Madeline's gaze on her, a look of betrayal so sharp that it felt like a physical blow.
I thought I knew you.
Madeline finally whispered, the anger fading slightly, replaced by a deep sadness.
I thought we were friends, Clara. But all this time, you were hiding something like this from me?
Clara's throat tightened as the guilt suffocated her.
I didn't know how to tell you, Madeline.
She said, her voice small and full of shame.
I didn't know how to face you after what happened.
Madeline's lips pressed into a thin line, and for a long moment she just stood there, staring at Clara, her expression unreadable. Finally she spoke, her voice quiet but firm.
I don't know what to do with this, Clara. I don't know how to go on pretending that things are normal.
She turned her back on Clara, walking slowly toward the door.
I need to be alone.
Ben, who had been standing off to the side, watching the exchange unfold, stepped forward hesitantly.
Madeline, wait.
He said softly.
Please. We can't just walk away from this.
But Madeline didn't turn around.
Yes, we can.
She replied without hesitation.
Because nothing will ever make this right. And I don't want to spend another minute pretending.
She left the room then, disappearing into the dark, silent house. The door clicked shut behind her, and for a long time no one moved. The room felt colder in her absence, the air heavier, and Clara, despite everything, couldn't help but feel a pang of loss. She had lost more than just Madeline's trust. She had lost a part of herself. Ben, his expression unreadable, walked over to where Clara stood. His eyes met hers, filled with guilt, but also something else, something broken.
I'm sorry.
He said quietly.
I never meant for it to end up like this.
Clara didn't look at him. She couldn't. The silence between them was too loud, and the weight of everything they had said, everything they had not said, hung thick in the air. She swallowed hard, feeling the lump in her throat.
I can't do this anymore.
She whispered, though her words were almost lost in the quiet.
I can't keep carrying this weight. It's breaking me.
Ben opened his mouth to speak, but before he could, a loud knock echoed from the front door, pulling them both out of their reverie. Clara's heart raced, and for a moment she wondered if the storm had returned, but when Ben opened the door, there was nothing but the wreckage left in the wake of the hurricane. Tom stood on the porch, his face grim, his clothes soaked through. The storm had passed, but the damage was still clear. He stepped inside without waiting for an invitation, his eyes scanning the room, taking in the tension.
I think we should talk.
Tom said quietly, his voice a stark contrast to the storm of emotions that had just passed through the house.
We need to figure out what we're going to do now. There's nothing left here for us to hide from anymore.
Sarah, who had been sitting in the corner, holding her child close, stood up as well.
Tom's right.
She said softly.
We can't keep avoiding this. The storm outside might be over, but the damage is still here.
The group looked at each other, unsure of what to say next. In the distance, the faint sound of sirens could be heard, the first responders starting to survey the destruction outside. But inside, the damage had already been done, and there was no clear path to healing. Tom continued, his voice steady but filled with a hard edge of finality.
We've all been running from something. But now we're trapped together, for better or worse. And we have to face it.
The weight of Tom's words sank in. Clara felt a deep ache in her chest, her body physically recoiling at the thought of facing the shattered pieces of everything. They were stuck here, physically because of the storm but emotionally because of their choices.
We can't change what's already happened.
Sarah said, her eyes moving from Clara to Ben to Tom.
But we can decide what comes next. We need to stop pretending like this is something we can just forget. We have to decide if we want to rebuild or if we're just going to walk away.
Clara's eyes blurred with tears as she stared at Sarah, seeing the deep hurt in her eyes too. Sarah had been so quiet through the storm, holding her baby in her arms, but now in the stillness, her words rang clear and true.
I don't know if I can rebuild.
Clara admitted, her voice cracking.
I don't know if any of us can. It feels like everything's been destroyed, and I don't know how to put it back together.
There was another long silence before Ben spoke, his voice distant but resolute.
Maybe we don't rebuild everything. Maybe we start small. Maybe we can save what we can and move on with our lives. I don't know what that looks like yet, but we have to make a choice. Stay or go. That's all we can do now.
Clara looked at him, her heart heavy with conflicting emotions. Could she stay in this broken town, in this broken house, with these broken people? Could she face Madeline again? Could they ever move past the betrayal? The storm outside had ended, but the storm within them all was far from over. The future felt uncertain, fragile and raw. But as Clara looked around the room, seeing Tom, Sarah and Ben, her heart aching but full of something else, something like hope, she knew that whatever they decided, they would have to face it together. Even if everything else was lost, they still had each other. And that was where the real storm began.